Hi there and welcome to the briefing room. I'm ABC's Rick Klein, joined here by Catherine Faulders. We've got John Parkinson at the White House and Ken Moten on the ground in Indiana, where the president is going to be headed for a campaign rally in a little bit. But you're looking at a live picture at the military transport plane that will be carrying the remains of Senator John McCain from his home state of Arizona back here to Washington. A public viewing at the Capitol tomorrow, a memorial service on Saturday, the burial over the weekend. Today, a day filled with remembrance for the late senator from Arizona. We're going to wrap the latest on that, but we want to hit some of the political headlines. First of all, starting with a story that broke in the New York Times this morning about the National Enquirer, Trump's favorite publication at times, and a lot more details in here about what else the Enquirer could have been sitting on and may still be sitting on regarding Donald Trump. We know that famous recording between President Trump and his lawyer, Michael Cohen, but it appears, according to the Times, that they were talking not just about one story, but many, many stories.
Oh, right. The New York Times is reporting that Trump and his longtime fixer, former lawyer, devised this plan to kill stories, to hide these stories dating back to the 80s, which is something we have not heard before. That's new reporting by the Times. But that recording that you mentioned that came out last month of President Trump and Michael Cohen talking about buying back the rights from David Pecker of AMI, they mentioned the word all. The key word on that tape is all. Cohen says, I need to open up a company for the transfer of all that information regarding our friend David. So, of course, that opens up the door for this reporting. And we reported, of course, that it was they were trying to buy back the rights of that Karen McDougal story. McDougal, of course, alleges she had that affair with Trump in 2006. So clearly the Times is reporting that there's many more of these stories that they wanted to keep secret. Right.
And John Parkinson, not a surprise in some ways that there may be other things out there. The president had many interactions with the New York tabloids and with the National Enquirer going back some 30 years. But no new word, am I right, from the White House so far today in response to this Times story, although the president's having quite a day teeing off on the media.
That's right. You know, he's really gone off on the media here on about 7 tweets this morning. He was really rapidly firing them off. You saw him attacking the fake news media for all sorts of issues, CNN sourcing here in regard to that open question on the Russia investigation. But, you know, I think that when it comes down to it, the president just really, you know, they haven't responded yet. So that will be a question that hopefully we can get an answer to if they do a briefing, which really they haven't really done many of the last 2 months.
And we should mention some news out of the White House today. The president saying that there will not be any pay increase for federal workers, some 2 million federal workers affected by this, Catherine. A lot of people, including many in the executive branch, of course, most of them in the executive branch. This isn't military workers. These are civilian workers. A lot of blowback over right. This announcement. Yeah. We want to talk about the departure, the impending departure of Don McGahn, the White House counsel. The president making his announcement yesterday. Today, Catherine, he is trying to shape perceptions of what drove this with some tweets talking about why he didn't decide to fire, in his view, why John McGahn isn't leaving.
Oh, right. There's a lot going on here. Of course, he announced yesterday, which is what we've reported, that Don McGahn, his White House counsel, plans to leave in the fall. He confirmed that on Twitter, but he appears to be lashing out on some reporting that appeared overnight, whether this was fueled by Jared and Ivanka, whether it had to do with Russia. But the Russia aspect of this is significant because, as we reported, Don McGahn, of all White House staffers who have sat down with Robert Mueller's team, who have been interviewed by Mueller's team, he has spent the most time speaking to his team in at least 3 interviews. Now, the president says he's approved all of these interviews and he knew he was going in, but of course it raises the question, what did Don McGahn say? Only McGahn and his lawyers, who through his lawyers shared that with the White House, know exactly what that was about. So obviously raising questions about whether it had to do with what he said to Mueller's team.
Yeah, and we forget this in the fast-moving nature of the news cycle. It was only 10 days ago that the reporting emerged that Don McGahn had talked for some 30 hours with Mueller's team. The following day is when Michael Cohen pleaded guilty and Paul Manafort was found guilty. This is all happened in the space of not a lot of time.
It's all happening, exactly. It's all happening all at once.
So the president, as we mentioned, is headed back to the campaign trail. He'll be at a rally in a couple of hours in Indiana. On the scene already is our friend and colleague, Kenneth Moten. And Ken, I know a lot of preparations on the ground for this in Indiana. The president working on behalf of Mike Braun, the Republican Senate candidate. Yeah. What's the sense of anticipation that you're picking up on early on?
Well, Rick, let me first say it's my debut on the briefing room, and I'm a little embarrassed because I can't even get you inside the arena where the president's rally is happening tonight. And that's because, as you guys know, the Secret Service is doing a security sweep right now. So We are outside, and I can show you the long line of President Trump supporters who have lined up around the corner here. This line right here actually goes all the way around the block. Keep going, keep going, keep going, and then that's the Ford Center right here where the big rally will be. Rick, as you mentioned, the president is here to not only for Mike Braun, who he's heavily supporting to defeat the incumbent moderate Democrat Joe Donnelly, but the president is also going to host a fundraiser. He's going to meet with some other supporters at a round table. So the president's going to spend a few hours here in Indiana before going inside the Ford Center here to really rally his base here in deep red Indiana. That race, Rick, you mentioned, is very fascinating when you look at how Joe Donnelly, this moderate Democrat, has really tried to walk that tightrope, with showing that he is somewhat close to President Trump, but obviously not really, but featuring ads with him shaking the president's hand. Obviously, Mike Braun going full steam ahead with that, obviously the support of the president and really showing that out to the people here in Indiana. Guys, I'm just amazed by the fact that people have lined up here. Meredith, go all the way down the block here. People have lined up in 90+ degree heat to see this president, and I think we're still maybe 2 hours from them getting inside. The rally is going to be at 7 o'clock local time, and so these folks didn't mind lining up here in this 90-degree summer day to see their president, and so they're going to wait out here. The president's going to be here momentarily. Again, he's got a fundraiser, he's got some other events, and then he's going to rally his supporters, guys. Oh, wait, before you go.
Yeah.
Before I go, I also want to make sure to tell you guys that this downtown, they are so excited about the president being here that they actually canceled an event, a concert, a performance by the Red Hot Chili Pipers. Not Peppers, Chili Pipers. It's a bagpipe band. I should have given Stump Rick Klein question on that one to see if you knew what kind of band that was. But I'll go ahead and tell you, it's a bagpipe band. They actually had to cancel the performance so the president could hold this rally tonight. So maybe the Red Hot Chili Pipers will be rescheduled. I hope so, because I love some bagpipes.
I had no idea that band existed. Thank you, Ken Moten, for enlightening us on this. It sounds like a copyright case for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. But imagine if the bagpipes had been going tonight in the midst of all this.
Some good background noise
Exactly.
there. But Rick, just one thing on these rallies, we're going to see a lot more of these.
Yeah.
The White House said that Trump will hold at least 8 rallies and 16 fundraisers across 15 states through the end of September alone.
And John Parkinson, you've been to a couple of these lately. What's the scene been like from your perspective? Give us your reporter's notebook.
Some of what I've seen lately.
Yeah.
But we had trips recently I went to West Columbia, South Carolina, been to Tampa, Florida, went out to Great Falls, Montana. I was in Charleston, West Virginia last week, and Columbus, Ohio last week. And these crowds are really, really enthusiastic for the president. He's turning out big crowds really at every one of these campaign rallies and campaign events that he's holding. Whether it's a closed fundraiser, they've all been well attended and sold out. He spoke at the Ohio Republican State Party annual dinner last week, and they made $250 of tickets and sold that out, probably with over 1,000 people that attended it. But the president lately has really just been sticking to his stump speech at these events. He really hasn't been weighing in on some of these news of day things. Last week when I was in Columbus, he barely even spoke about the Russia investigation, and it was during the week when we saw some big news with Paul Manafort and his former lawyer Michael Cohen. So like Catherine said, we should have the president out multiple times per week over the next 2 months, and I think really this is really going to pick up the pace in the coming weeks as the campaign season really kicks off after Labor Day.
So we'll keep an eye on what happens tonight, see if he sticks to the script. Want to talk about the headline from earlier in the week about the death toll in Puerto Rico. This was a shocker. An official study has prompted the government of Puerto Rico to revise their fatality estimate up to nearly 3,000 from the deadly storm last year. We remember the president making a trip down there and being in the middle of some controversy, some tangles with the mayor of San Juan. But take a listen to the president's response yesterday when he was asked by reporters at the White House about this revised death toll.
Yeah, I think we did a fantastic job in Puerto Rico. We're still helping Puerto Rico. We have put billions and billions of dollars into Puerto Rico, and it was a very tough one. Don't forget, their electric plant was dead before the hurricane. We put a lot of money and a lot of effort into Puerto Rico, and I think most of the people in Puerto Rico really appreciate what we've done.
And that prompts a response from the mayor of San Juan, reading in part, President Trump continues to demonstrate an inability to understand what his job in this crisis is all about. This was never about him. This was never about politics, about saving lives. His lack of sensibility is beyond offensive. 2,975 people died because of his inability to get the job done.
Yeah, and you remember the very public feud between the two of them in the immediate aftermath of this hurricane. He says he called the mayor nasty. She was asking for more help on the ground, and this was at a time when the president was praising the administration's response. He was asked to grade his response 1 to 10. He gave himself a 10, which is perhaps in hindsight a bit of a premature grading. But exactly, the mayor again lashing out at the president.
Yeah, and I think obviously saying that people died because of his inability is something, but the president did brag about the lower death tolls that originally were generated out of there, comparing them to Katrina in very favorable terms. This number is now bigger than Katrina's.
It is now bigger than Katrina's, and he's still saying he did a fantastic job. So.
And as we mentioned earlier, this is a day that belongs to John McCain in a lot of ways in politics. A memorial service held in Arizona just a few hours ago. Right now, his body is set to be transported back to Washington for further remembrance, including visitation tomorrow at the U.S. Capitol and a special ceremony and burial over the weekend. It was a special couple of hours. If you didn't get a chance to watch, you can catch the highlights at abcnews.com. But you saw the McCain children very emotional in speaking about their father, the whole McCain family, and a visit from the former vice president, Joe Biden, who of course opposed McCain in 2008 on the presidential ticket and developed a very close bond, not just to Senator McCain, but also to members of his family as he battled the same type of cancer that claimed his own son, Bode, a few years ago. But take a listen to some of what Joe Biden had to say a little bit earlier.
John's code was ageless, is ageless. When you talked earlier, Grant, you talked about values. It wasn't about politics with John. He could disagree on substance, but it was the underlying values that animated everything John did. Everything he was could come to a different conclusion. But where he'd part company with you, if you lack the basic values of decency, respect, knowing that this project is bigger than yourself. John's story is the American story. That's not hyperbole. It sounds like it's the American story.
A special day, remembering a special man and a special legacy, Catherine. President Trump, of course, not part of this at all. Biden's words, I think, speak to the Trump era and to the sense of what's lost in the wake of John McCain's passing, a different era of politics that he and his former colleague were talking about there.
Yeah, absolutely. His words speak to that. McCain's farewell and his final words also speak to that as well. But I think what you're seeing and what you'll see, too, with former Presidents Obama and George Bush speaking is, look, this isn't about policies. This is about remembering an American hero, and we can do that in a bipartisan way.
And it has been quite a week, and I've personally felt a lot of inspiration watching this all develop and hearing the stories that are told.
Emotional images.
All right, that does it for this edition of The Briefing Room. Thanks for joining. Our thanks to Ken Moten in Indiana, John Parkinson at the White House. For Catherine Folders, I'm Rick Klein. Keep watching here at ABC News Live.